It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, November 25th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that thinks the Flyers really missed some opportunities against the Lightning.
I'd say so.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and welcome to Locked On Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 20 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com. You can win $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And Russ, tough game against the Lightning. We'll get into that. Plus, it's Phantoms Tuesday, so we're going to give you our report on what went down in Lehigh Valley this past weekend and catch up on Jet Luchenko's move in the OHL a little bit later in the show. But yeah, this was one of the more frustrating games of the season for the Philadelphia Flyers because given that it was such a low event game, the Flyers absolutely had opportunities and had a chance to be in it. They just were very discombobulated and not executing on passing or just anything cohesive for most of this game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The a few things that struck me, again, they fall behind. Like they've been behind a lot this year, but they didn't have a shot on goal for it was like 12 minutes to
Felt
go
like
in the
that,
first
yeah.
period. It was something like that. So that's kind of tough. It's one of those things where, and it wasn't Andrei Vasilevsky that really won the
Nope.
game for him. This was a game where I felt like we talked about that Tampa top line, and we were like, they're good. They're still really good, and they have other good complementary players. And Hagel, Kucherov, Cirelli, they were all dangerous, right? But their best players were their best players, and the Flyers' best players weren't playing their best game. And I think that was because they were discombobulated. And, the one that kind of bugged me was the second goal, sorry, because Sean Couturier was really late getting back. And this is going to, we're at the point in the season now where the minutes are going to start adding up for him. And this is where, again, I wish the Flyers kind of would take that into consideration and play him a little less in the second period, put Michkov with somebody else, do something like that so he could be fresher for parts of the game. Because now tomorrow playing a back-to-back, it's going to be hard on him.
Well, it's not back to back.
It's the next day, yeah.
There's the next day, and he did have reduced minutes, I would say. He played 16-26 in this game. So I don't know if you could say that. The play is no question bad, right? In terms of that individual play. I'm not sure it's a systemic thing with Sean Couturier at this moment, but all that being said, you're right about some top guys not stepping up properly. And, Travis Konechny, again, just had a really subpar game in terms of.
He was making the extra move he didn't need to make. He was just
Passing when he should have shot.
I mean, honestly,
shooting poorly when
there
he
was
did.
a point where he was looking at the puck at his skates when he had an offensive chance. And I was like, wow, you're really taking a long time here. I don't know what it feels like for him when he's doing that right now, but it seemed like it took forever.
Yeah, and I'm feeling very frustrated on his behalf because I am sure this is eating him alive in terms of his execution, right?
Yeah.
Because I think he gets to the right place on the ice. He's choosing the right lanes most of the time, right? I think he's doing everything right except for one little thing that is undermining everything he's done on that rush up into that point. And he just can't put it all together all at once. And I cannot imagine how that is making him feel right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, and Owen Tippett had a really good look. It just didn't go. I mean, that happens.
Off the post, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just that's going to happen at times. But I felt like still too many 2-on-1s, So I think they're going to end up taking Zamula out, and I think they're going to put Juleson back in. I feel like that's happening now.
Well, yeah, I mean, the odd man rush the other way for the Flyers was their Achilles heel in terms of the actual goals against, right?
Yeah.
I would not put it on Urson. I mean, would it have been nice for him to
He was
save
fine. I mean,
that first one? Sure, but
he
I
didn't make
don't
any
think you can put it on
spectacular
him.
saves, but it wasn't his game like that. He lost it.
Right. Right. It really was the Flyers' lack of ability to get back defensively or
I mean, they were slower. I mean, Tampa was faster. You know, there's Tampa. It's an interesting thing with Tampa because we know about their top players, but they have other guys that they've sprinkled in this lineup. Like Dominic James is a really fast player. Now, he may not be able to bury it, or at least not yet at the NHL level, but you saw he had at least 2 times where he just broke away from the pack and got clear shots on net. That's the thing about them is they have still guys that they have still sprinkled in that make up for the other players that are missing. Their size does matter too. And I'll tell you when it mattered. It mattered when the Flyers were on the power play, and it mattered at the end of the game when the Flyers had the extra man. They had maybe 1 shot on net. Maybe they had 2, maybe. But those guys, some of the bigger guys that they have with the reach that they had, the Flyers had no space out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair as well. I think the Flyers did a better job creating some of that space later in the game. But unfortunately, I think it was just a little too late. And
Yeah.
I also think it was really unfortunate that when the Flyers were starting to put things together a little bit better at 5-on-5, that's when they finally decided to call some penalties, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of derailed what the Flyers were trying to do there, even though they did initially get that one tiny power play before they gave it up by giving up a
Right.
penalty, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was really unfortunate. And with, Zamula taking that penalty at the end, to
And
your
I don't even
point,
think the refs wanted to call it, but he was just so obvious that they had.
right. But I just think that kind of doubles down on your theory that they're going to take him out of the
Yeah.
lineup,
And they
right?
cut his minutes a bit.
They
So
did.
so
They
both those
did.
things do make me think that, again, Matvei Michkov did not have a lot of minutes.
No.
I thought that Brian Boucher did a very good job of pointing out that when Nick Seeler was coming down the end, he threw the puck back to Sanheim instead of giving it to Michkov in the slot. Like, that's something that is systemic, and that's something that is hurting that young player because he
Yeah.
should be a focal point when he's got a position in the slot because he has a great shot. Like, let him use it. That was something where it's like Sanheim is not known for his shot. Michkov is. So those are
Although
decisions.
Sanheim has been taking a lot more shots.
No, he has, but he's
recently.
not going to score a lot of goals. Like, these are decisions that are made by players, these quick decisions that I do feel like on passes that they were making some of the wrong decisions.
Yeah, although I do feel like Nick Seeler was playing a little bit of hot potato in this game because
Yeah.
the puck was dropped to him a couple of times earlier in the game and he just did nothing with it. So I'm
Yeah.
sure he's like, this is not my night. I'm not taking these
Right.
shots anymore.
And that may be. And that may be.
But yeah, I thought that was an interesting aspect of the game because Konechny dropped it to Seeler once. And I thought that was one of Konechny's poor choices in the game as well.
And I feel like they're going to break up the Andre Drysdale connection because, like, Andre didn't have his best game. He wasn't bad. Drysdale had
No,
his
he was
worst.
I thought Andre was one of the better players in the
Yeah.
game overall. And there was not much positive in terms of individual play that stood out
No, but
here.
Drysdale had his worst game.
It was one of them. Yeah, especially, that one missed chance that he had as well. I think, that could have turned the tide of this game.
sure.
I also, like, what are we doing with Nick Delorier here? Because that fight was one of the more dumb fights I have seen.
I'll give him this. Like, this guy's got some big ones, right? He's fighting someone 6'9". Like, you have to be half crazy to do it. And he did hit him on the chin. But in the end,
Sure.
having
Why though?
I know.
To what end? To what end?
In the end, they needed speed on that fourth line more than they needed him in the lineup. I agree with you.
Yeah, I just like, what was he doing there? And because, we talked on the last show about the Devils game, about the even balance between the lines. And that's because the
Yes.
Flyers were ahead, right? And they had the
Right.
luxury of doing that. And, we just reverted right back to the
It went
fourth
right
line
back.
getting no ice time because what were they contributing at this
Right.
point? And once again, Abos is hung out to dry because
He
he
really
can't do
was. I mean,
anything.
he was trying, but he's got 2 guys on his line that just can't create,
Yeah.
and it's a dead zone for him, and I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I do. I do. And again, we talk about Samerson not playing well in general, but this was a good game for
No,
him
it was
overall. And
fine.
I feel bad for him because the Flyers skaters did not do anything to help him out there. But we will see Dan Vladar in net against the Florida
Yep.
Panthers, I'm sure, and we will talk about that game on tomorrow's show. But up next, we're going to talk about that Jet Luchenko trade and start getting into our Phantoms Tuesday prospect report.
The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who'll score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. I would go with Donovan Mitchell to lead the league in scoring. He's doing pretty well with Cleveland. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen of the day. And thanks again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On tomorrow's show, we will be previewing the matchup against the Florida Panthers, part of this big road trip the Flyers are on right now. Plus, we're going to answer your mailbag questions, so make sure you get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on any of our socials, or comment on our YouTube channel. We mentioned this at the top of the show, but we want to dig into this Jet Luchenko trade at the OHL level before we get into our Phantom segment here. And interestingly, going to Brantford with a connection here. So, like, what's your take on this, and how does this help Jet Luchenko's development?
Yeah, I don't watch the OHL closely as far as how great teams are. I know they have a really good record, but Jay McKee's a good coach, and we brought up his name when the Flyers were looking at coaches. He played with Danny Briere before. He's had good results with other teams. This one, he's finally turning around, so it's good for him because he'll play on a better team. The thing that I feel bad about, believe it or not, is because when Guelph announced that they would get the Memorial Cup next year, that was a guarantee that Jet could have played in it, and it's like a year too late. Where this year there's no guarantee because that kind of experience is invaluable. But he's got a shot at it, so we'll see.
Yeah, Brentford is the top team in the Eastern
Mm-hmm.
Conference right now. And I think, being on a good team is important because it does give him that chance to maybe get further along in the
Yeah.
playoffs, get more experience, play around better players. I think that, the downside to that a little bit is ice time, right? Because when there's more good
Sure.
players, you're competing for ice time. Jake O'Brien, who we talked about a lot as a potential Flyers draft pick, is the top center
Yeah.
on that team. So you would like to see Jet Luchenko as the 1C at the OHL
Yeah, he's
level,
not
but
gonna be.
he's not going to be in that circumstance. So, there's some pros and cons here. I think ultimately it's going to be a good thing for him, but we just do have to recognize that he just may not get the ice time that he would have otherwise.
No, that's fair. I mean, Jake O'Brien has like 40 points in 20 games.
Yeah.
I know Luchenko has, like somebody pointed out, he's 1.5 assists a game, but Jake O'Brien's 1.48. So,
Correct.
and he scores goals. So, yeah, but we'll see. Maybe the things will ratchet up for him, and and we'll see a little bit more out of him, and that's what you hope for.
Yeah, I think so too. But we will definitely keep track of how Brantford is doing in the OHL now. Looking at the Lehigh Valley Phantoms this weekend, pretty good. I wouldn't say stellar, but pretty good results here for them.
A little lucky, I would say.
Yeah, that's really what it is in some ways. They had 2 wins and a loss. They defeated Rochester on Wednesday and Hartford in a really good comeback, I will say, on Saturday. Shouldn't have gone down a couple of goals the way they did, but they did manage to come back and win that one in regulation. Didn't even need overtime or a shootout for that. And then they lost to Providence, who's like essentially the best team in the AHL right now.
Yeah. Yeah, the Providence one, like, that's forgivable. The Hartford one, the one thing about it is it's always nice when a team can make comebacks, right? It is.
Right.
But you don't want to have to be that team that's relying on making comebacks all the time, because sometimes that gets hard to do late in the season. But no, I mean, this was a good run, but it does show that the goaltending is definitely better, but the goal scoring still not where you want it to be.
Right. Right. Because I think, they should be scoring a little bit more here on average per game,
Yeah.
right? Like 3 goals in a win, 2 goals in a loss, 4 goals in a win. Maybe it should be bumped up to maybe 5, 4 goals
Right.
and that would get some of the individual guys' stats up too,
It would.
as far as where they are in the league relative to other players, and it increases their chances of call-up potential and all of that. It just makes them be performing at AHL level as opposed to exceeding AHL level,
Right.
which
I
is
think
what you
that's
want to
fair.
see.
Yeah, you want to see it exceed. No question
Yeah.
about it.
Now, on the upside of all that, I mean, that is upside, to be
Yeah.
fair, but on the further upside, the team is overall getting better results than
Mhm.
they have been the last several years for the
Yes.
regular season. The Phantoms have been struggling in recent years to kind of just barely make the playoffs or be solidly in that last position or something like that. They are still third in the Atlantic Division right now, which is very good. It's
Mhm.
still early enough that the difference between the teams is small, but nonetheless, they're kind of keeping up with the Joneses here, and that's something we haven't necessarily seen from the Phantoms in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I look at them, and depending on what they might do, and they don't have like a big trade deadline, but sometimes they'll pick up a player or so. But um, they might be able to go 2 rounds. I don't think they're winning the Calder Cup this year, but
No.
they at least have a team that's a lot more competitive, better system, better goaltending. I mean, that's definite.
Yeah, and I think they recover from losses a lot better. They
Mhm.
don't get into ruts in the same way that they have in the past. I think that, they learn from what they've done in previous games in a way that maybe they haven't recently. So I do appreciate that.
Me too.
We had some roster changes this week, but not as many as usual. Of course, Adam Yenning is on a conditional assignment with
Yeah.
the team. They kind of got the band back together and paired him up with Helge Grans, which honestly didn't do much for me this weekend. Now, there's some rust there for sure with
Yeah, I
Yanning
mean,
because he
that's
hasn't
normal.
played. So I want to see some more before I make a judgment, but nothing of note from either of those guys in particular this weekend. Max Gwinnett cleared waivers and was down with the team, but has not played yet,
Which is
and
fair. He
which is
hasn't
totally
played all
fair.
year. It's gonna take him a while to ramp up.
Yeah, and John Snowden is a guy who's gonna make a guy practice for
Yes.
a week or 2
Yeah, he
before he's
wants him
gonna
to get
put him in the
familiar with the
lineup.
guys, with the system. But we should talk about what I think is the elephant in the room. Surprised that hasn't happened yet, but Nikita Gorbenkin should be sent down. And he's not playing at all in the NHL. Like, Rick Tocchet is completely scratching him every game now, and he needs to play. This is a young guy that needs to play, and let him at least bond with this team. If he's not going to get his chance up there right now, that would be the best thing for him. I'm surprised he's not there already, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think it would help the Phantoms as
I would.
well. I do think it would be kind of a bumpy ride down for Grebenkin in terms of he would have a little bit of a shock to the system, and it would take him a couple of games. But I would rather him play in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things. But I think that is a fair point. Just looking at the team overall, I still want them to stay out of the box more. I think
Yeah.
that's something, they started off kind of negatively in that position, and they're getting steadily better, but it still hasn't changed enough to my liking, especially because the penalty kill is not as strong as it
No.
needs to be. They were 6 for 10 for the weekend there, and it should be 8 for 10. If you're going to
Right.
be shorthanded 10 times over the course of a weekend, you really gotta, kill it 8 or 9 times at least.
No question. I mean, that's a whole thing. It's like there's a real fine line to being hard to play against, and like, hey, if we take a dumb penalty, okay, we'll make up for it on the kill. If you don't have that, then it does eventually cost you games and points in the standings. It's just a fact.
Right. Now, I will say, usually we talk about goaltending kind of later in the segment. I want to talk about it now because, again, Alexei Kolosov is having such a strong season
Mhm.
at the AHL level, with significant but not overwhelming action in his couple of games, a 25 shot game, a 23 shot game, and especially on that Friday game against Providence. That is a very tough team to
That's a
face.
tough game. Yeah.
And so 20 saves on 23 shots, he kept that team in that game, no question. And the fact that it was a 1-goal game against Providence is a big deal. And Kolosov was a big part of that.
Yeah, look, I mean, he's doing well. What's interesting is he's obviously it's not going to be incumbent on him like to play a certain way to get called up, because clearly the Flyers are just going to stick with Sam Ersson for a while, and that really doesn't matter how Kolosov plays. So what his
And I'm okay with
contribution
it, to be honest.
yeah,
From a
what his
from a
contribution to
Kolosov.
the team is good
Mhm.
and that's all I think people should look at right now, because even if Urson were to have another 3 bad starts, he's still going to play. And so, yeah, this is good for him, because at least this is all positive reinforcement than just sitting as a third up in,
Correct. Yeah,
up in
this is
Philly.
good for Kolosov's development. Whether
Yeah,
it's good for the Flyers is another question,
right.
but whether it's good for Kolosov is not. This is
No,
good for him, and
this
he's
is the
playing
right
well.
thing for him.
And the action that Carson Bjarnason is getting is the right number
Mhm.
of games and the right situations, and he had a real solid performance on Saturday. Again, with the team going down 2 goals to a not so great team, I would say, he kept them in it to give them the
Yeah.
opportunity to create that comeback. So 17 saves on 19 shots. Really pleased with the goaltending thus far. But there are so many more guys we got to talk about on the prospect side of things, including Alex Bump, Alexei Gendron, Carson DeWard. I want to talk about Ty Murchison today as
Okay.
well, because his defensive pairing is very interesting to look at. And we are going to do all of that coming up next. Hockey season is well underway, and nothing beats being in the arena for these games. But let's be real, getting tickets can sometimes be a headache. And between waiting in online queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on the Flyers. And that is where Gametime comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress free. One of my favorite features is that you can see exactly what your view is going to be before buying the tickets with their in-app seat view feature. Their zone deals are also a game changer, where you pick a section, Gametime picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NHL tickets for under $25. And I recently used Gametime to grab tickets for a concert. It could not have been simpler. I had great seats in minutes. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right, Russ. So, want to get to kind of the most important quote unquote prospects here. And Alex Bump continues to have some really strong play. I would
Mhm.
say, he's still making some mistakes here and
Mhm.
there in terms of puck possession, but his playmaking is really coming through here. And that shows in his stats. He's got 4 goals, 11 assists for 15 points in 18 games so far
Mhm.
this season, which puts him 6th in rookie scoring in the AHL, with those 15 points. The top point getter has 20 points in 1 fewer game. So I think really we just need to get him more goals, I think, as the season progresses here. But it's not bad where he is now, given where we are in the calendar.
No, it's not bad. He's gaining some chemistry with Denver Barkey. That's good.
Yep.
At times he looks good on the rush, so that's good. It's just this overall game. It is going to take a while to
Yeah.
evolve. And I do think now that the hype has died down, it's, again, it's not like Alex Bump is going to be a 70-point scorer in the NHL. He's not. But he can be an NHLer, and he could probably be a 45-point guy. And that takes even a little while from the transition from college to this. Again, he had this great year last year, came in hot, learned some things, and I think he's learning from a better coach now. And I think that's going to help him more in the long run.
Absolutely. And this line with Peterson and Barkey is like, it's the perfect line for
Yeah,
the development of Bump and
it
Barkey,
is.
like we've said. And I love that Snowden has kept that line together
Yep.
for yet another week for all 3 games, not mixing it up. I think that's important for both those guys' development. And Barkey is absolutely reaping the rewards of that as well. Continued really positive scoring, a goal on Wednesday, a goal and assist on Saturday. And I think his playmaking is getting more and more confident as the season has progressed.
Yeah, you can see his confidence is building. Again, the trick for him, even for next year, whether it's at the NHL or the AHL, and I think it'll still be AHL, will be if he could get stronger, if he can get physically stronger, it will really help his game. And I think that's something where, again, this year he's probably moderately stronger, but I didn't see a big difference. And so, like, sometimes it takes a couple of years for guys to really build themselves up.
Yeah, I think the next step for him, right, if he finds success for the duration of this season on a strong line like that, then like next year he's got to lead a line in a lot
Right.
of ways, right?
Yeah.
He's got to be the carrier of
Be
a
one of the
line.
2 or 3 best scorers, lead a line, all that for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's it. One interesting development, I think Alexei Gendron had another pretty solid week. A goal on Wednesday. I believe that was the one with like the 8-minute delay
Yeah.
of when it got reviewed. And then he had an assist in the other 2 games. So continues to put points on the board. And it is kind of the inverse of Jacob Gaucher, who's had a bit of a struggle since he went back down to the Phantoms. He got back on the board for the first time since the Flyers stint, a goal and an assist on Wednesday, didn't have any points in the other game. So a little spark coming back, but I just feel like as one is gaining its power, the other one has lost power a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. I mean, again, I don't really look at Gaucher as more than just an NHL fill-in type. And I think that's really where he is. Gendron will be an interesting one because he's probably boom or bust. And so, because he's just one of those guys that definitely can prove it at the AHL level. Don't know if he can prove it at the next level. And that's, eventually we'll see that. But yeah, he's doing what he needs to do. And that's good. It's good to see.
Yeah, Carson Dweck got back on the board this week as well, which was good to see. We'd been kind of wondering like what
Yeah.
was going on with him. Now he's gotten tossed around the lineup a little bit, so there's something to be said for that, with in terms of adjusting to different line mates and getting different levels of ice time versus in previous games. But he was pretty solidly on a second line with Carl Grundstrom, who's continuing to play really well down there.
Yeah.
And Anthony Richard, who just does his thing with his speed
Yeah, I
and
mean,
gets
Richard
on the
is,
board. So
an AHLer for sure. And when he's there, he's really good, like we know. So that is a good line for him. I like
yeah, and I think he doesn't have to despite being the center, does not have to carry that line.
No. And again, he's learning. He's
Yeah.
rounding out his game. He's figuring it out.
Yeah, and Grundstrom is like the second highest point getter on the team right now, right between Bump and Barkey,
Yeah.
which is good. So, I think again, positive things overall from DeWart, I think right now, which we're a little bit worried about him to some degree. Now, I want to, like I said, talk about this defensive pairing with Ty Murchison and Christian Kyrou, because Christian Kyrou has been, this change of scenery has just done remarkable things for his confidence in his game, continues to put points up on the board, a goal and assist Wednesday, a goal Saturday. He's got 3 goals and 9 assists in 10 games with the Phantoms so far. He's got 4 multi-point games. And this is doing gangbusters for Ty Murchison's development because any offensive pressure is off on Ty Murchison, and
Right.
he's never
He's not
been
that
that
guy.
guy. Right. He's never been that guy, but it allows Ty Murchison to develop his style of play
Mhm.
in an environment where he doesn't have to worry about getting the puck up the ice as much. He doesn't have to worry about getting points on the board or taking as many shots. But that pairing is plus 11 for a defensive pairing at
Yeah,
the
that's great.
AHL level. They're basically tied for fourth in the AHL sort of as a pairing if you look at their individual plus minus relative to the other defensemen. I know we don't love plus minus, but in the AHL, sometimes that's all you
No, that's
have to
fine. I
work with
mean, you
there,
could
right?
point to it. Yeah, I think Christian Cairo is like an AHL star. I don't know if he'll be more
Yeah.
than that, but as far as for the Phantoms, it was a great pickup for them.
Yeah, and to my point, like, helping Ty Murchison and his development
It's a big deal.
it's a really big deal, and I think that will allow Murchison to make some mistakes and recover from them a lot better, when he does, but it really has turned Murchison into a more confident, I would say, defensive with a slight two-way game
Yeah,
kinda prospect here, and that's good for the organization.
it is. What I feel bad about for Cairo is based on how the coaches in the NHL is, he probably would only get a chance to get up there if Andre got hurt. And I know it's funny that we're
Right.
saying that,
I
but that's probably
know.
the only this is how, things evolve, but that's probably the only role that they would see him trying to slot into. And if he's not the guy, then he's not going to get up. He's not going to get a call up.
Yeah,
Probably
I
the case.
know. It like, oh, the irony of that
I
situation now
know.
that Emile Andre finally got the job with
I
the
know.
Flyers.
It's funny.
It is funny, and with this slight logjam, but again, we don't know what's gonna go on in terms of them trying
No.
to get some trades going, and that there
Right.
may be some opportunities late in the season, especially after the trade deadline for Christian to get
I
some
mean, if
NHL games.
if Rasmus Ristolainen gets going, then there probably will be a trade of some sort because
Right.
then they will have too many guys and even too many for Lehigh at that point.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. The other Phantoms defenseman is Ethan Sampson, who had just come back from injury last
Yeah.
week. He's been kind of a mixed bag in terms of who his D partner is. So I
Yeah,
want to
it's
wait a
gonna
little
take him a little
while.
while to adjust again. I agree.
Yeah, he was partnered with Hunter McDonald too, which isn't honestly great for Samson, I don't
Right.
think. But I think that we just need to give him a little bit more time. But he's got a few games under his belt
So
now,
McDonald,
which is good.
he's kind of like doing what he did last year. He finished strong and he's kind of like okay, but he's not really setting himself apart for the kind of defenseman that the organization hopes he could be. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there's other defensemen who are making a stronger case for themselves at this particular point in the season, and
Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily that Hunter McDonald is playing poorly. It's just that there's other guys who are playing better,
Right.
right?
Right. That happens. But again, at some point he is going to have to show a little bit more like a whole season through and not just at a big point in the season.
Yeah, well, they'll all have some more opportunities later this week when they face Wilkes-Barre Scranton, who's another tough opponent. We've
Oh yeah.
seen them already this year on Friday, and then on Saturday playing Laval again, who they lost to earlier in the season. So these are two very important games for the Phantoms, and especially with a 2-game week, like you're going to be well rested.
Yeah, they're probably facing a really good goalie in Laval, so that's another tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, but we'll talk about how they did next week on our Phantoms Tuesday report. Thanks so much for listening today. Like I said earlier, on tomorrow's show, we're going to preview the Panthers matchup as well as get to your mailbag questions. So make sure you send those in via email at lockdownflyers@gmail.com. You can mention us on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen. Today, for your next listen, check out Locked On NHL Game Night. It's every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale with NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. It's on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.